Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Leif Johnson. Roman is out today, so it's just me. And over here on the remote, you have Michael Simon and you have Jason Cross.
No.
Yeah, we have some, kind of staid topics today, but we're going to make it interesting. We're going to be talking about Apple's market cap. We're going to be talking about Apple going to the Supreme Court, and we're going to be talking about that trade-in program. That's some fun stuff there. But I will tell you what's really fun is we are actually teaming up with AnyTrans. It's a data management tool, data transfer tool, and we are giving away an 11-inch iPad Pro, a 2018 model. And if you just go on the website right now, you'll see the giveaway up there. Just sign into the widget. You can get additional chances to win if you sign up for one of our social media channels like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and stuff like that. But since we love you all as Macworld podcast listeners, we are also allowing you to have an extra entry if you enter this code when you enter it. And so the code, and you Macworld loyalists will know what this means, is Wolverine. So enter that in. You'll see a spot to enter that, and you enter Wolverine, you'll get an extra chance to win.
Yeah, any kind of Wolverine. You could put a Filipino Wolverine. You can put...
Actually, just keep it to the word Wolverine.
Yeah, just keep it to the one word.
Yes. So, but yes, once again...
You're going to ruin everything, Dan.
Right. So we're teaming up with AnyTrans for this. Contest ends on December 12th. We will also remind you about this during next week's podcast. And one thing, please check your spam folders when December 12th rolls around, because that's the only way that we have of contacting any of you, and sometimes people haven't gotten their wonderful prizes yet. So yeah, if you want an 11-inch iPad Pro, yes, sign up today, and we'll get that out to you hopefully once you win if you check your email. So all right, so we're going to jump in. So just back in August, Apple hit where it was the first $1 trillion company, publicly traded in the world. Now it is not so much. Matter of fact, briefly for the other day, Microsoft actually was ahead of it. So it's, getting back to the 90s here. And as of today, Microsoft has a valuation of $830.64 billion. Apple is slightly ahead with $834 billion. That was this morning about 8 o'clock.
No one ever really talks about Microsoft when they talk about the big tech stocks, but they've been, steadily huge.
Quietly lurking there.
Well, see, and that was the thing. It was like, where did this come from? And a lot of it is their cloud computing stuff. It's, Office 365, Dynamics 65 and stuff.
Yeah, they just don't have those kind of hot consumer products that everyone's talking about that makes people think of them as, but they just do such good, steady, long-term business.
Yeah, I mean, they're bigger than Google, Amazon, Facebook, all that. No one ever mentions them in that FANG talk.
Yes.
Right.
Which means they're probably like the only ones that are priced correctly.
Maybe, yeah.
There's no hype,
Yeah.
And and that's another thing is, once, I think Apple could recover if it, delivers on something really cool next year. And, this will factor into something we're talking about later on, but I think, it's it's an off year, it's an S year, it's the iPhone XS.
They made like $80 billion last quarter.
I know, but people are wanting this hot new thing and stuff like this.
Yeah,
so we're used to this
there is
being
this
like
expectation that Apple is going to reinvent the iPhone like every year. It can't be. Like it takes too long.
Well, they kind of did last year.
Yes.
Well, that's what
that was saying. It was last year. Yes.
So this year you're not going to get this dramatic, amazing change.
And quite frankly, you probably won't get it till 2023 or 24. I mean, it takes time for these things to roll out.
But even just like even just a non-S year, like you're going to have, it's going to take at least 2 or 3 years before you get something like a redesign. Or a major new feature. Yeah. I think they're going to do fine once they start rolling out a lot more service stuff. Once all their shows go live and they get millions of subscribers to that or whatever, the services business will help pick up a lot of this slack.
As Microsoft has learned. Yes.
Yeah, and it's and it's not just Apple. The whole stock market's been down.
Yeah. Well,
Amazon
tech particularly. Yeah.
Yeah, Amazon's down 25% or so in the last 3 months. And it's not because they didn't have a good iPhone this year or something like that. Like nobody's using less Amazon. In fact, this is their hot quarter, and it's been going down.
They made more money on Monday than like a single day in their history.
Right. So it's a lot of it's just the stock market in general for a variety of factors.
It's also all of these tech stocks, as Dan was just saying, they're quite overvalued.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple is a great company. We love their stuff, but $1 trillion market value, I don't know about that. I mean, this is a correction that's been overdue in my mind.
Yeah. The big tax break was spent a lot on stock buybacks and stuff, which artificially inflated values a little bit. And there was a lot of heat in the market. And then, so this is correcting to some of that.
And it's kind of a confluence of things. They are not going to be reporting iPhone numbers or iPad numbers anymore.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to say a low guidance, but the guidance for next quarter compared to what people were expecting is on the lower side. It's still like $90 billion. And
that was the thing.
But people were expecting close to 100. So.
Yeah, you were just disappointed, and as opposed, and they're making everything tank. But like you said, it's kind of like a perfect storm and stuff. You also have
there's a lot of factors at once.
You also have Trump's tariff talks that just came out the other day.
Yeah, people are nervous about that.
The big thing is the iPhone numbers. Like that's what people have tied Apple's success to.
Yes.
For the last 10 years.
Yeah, and the fact that
without that, it's going to be guesses and.
Yeah, the fact that you're going to get revenue numbers, but you're not going to know sales units.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to guess about sales units, and people are upset about that. And to Apple's point, it's true. The sale of a single iPhone isn't what it used to be. Apple makes more money from more places now. It's not a measure of the health of the company.
Makes more money per iPhone, like way more.
Yeah.
And Cruz on Reed on YouTube makes a kind of an interesting comment that if Apple doesn't think it will sell as many products moving forward, that stands true for everyone. So the phone market is I
mean. I think what people are concerned about with Apple is in the last 3 months, they have dramatically raised their prices for everything. Mm-hmm. And so people are trying to read the tea leaves as to why, and maybe, they're guessing, okay, so there's going to be a slowdown in product sales. They're increasing prices to make up for that. I think all of that is just noise. Mm-hmm. I think, Apple, they set their prices at what they set them. They're still making 30 to 35%. Margins on each product that hasn't blown up or gone down. Mm-hmm. So, they're creating better products. They're charging more for these products, and people are going to still buy these products. People who want them will still buy them. Mm-hmm. They're still going to make, 80 to 85 billion in a down quarter next year. They're not going to fall off the face of the earth.
Yes. And, but that's the thing. I just when I see a lot of the analysts that I've looked at, like was the one Wedbush, Dan Ives. It was there wasn't big. Like it was he used to have it at 218 million for his fiscal year for 2019 first, but now it's just going to be 210 million. I mean, these are not like massive drops in my opinion. And
these are iPhone numbers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And.
Every million matters, I suppose. But it's not like they're going to sell half as many. All those stories you read about cutting production by 50%. I mean, that's not a correlation to how many iPhones they're selling.
Yes.
You read these supply chain stories like every year. Somebody goes oh, they've cut our orders for this part by 50%. It's like, because they had too many of them last quarter.
Right. Or they're using somebody else, or they're building them differently. There's a million reasons why they cut supplier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it always turns out that way. We used to get iPhone sales numbers, but you would see the iPhone sales numbers in the next report 3 months later, and it's like, oh, it was fine.
And if Apple comes out next quarter and makes $95 billion, their stock's going to go up $100. Well, not quite that much, but it'll zoom right back up. They're fine. They're still the richest, the most influential tech company in the world. And, this is a bump in the road, I think.
So I have a question.
And they're rolling in money.
Why do we even care about these numbers? Like, do these numbers actually affect the strategy? Why are we paying so close to it? Or is it just because we have nothing?
It's a good question. It depends on who's leading the company. Like there's the idea that if the stock price keeps going bad, Apple will strategically do something to address that. Mm-hmm. Whether that is they feel like some people go, well, good, they'll finally lower their prices because their stock's down because their phones are too expensive. Other people say no, they'll just jack up the prices because they know they have a captive market and they're going to extract as much money out of them as possible and stuff. So it only matters in the sense that like if this happens for a while and Apple starts to worry about it, what are they going to do that affects us?
If there was like a CEO shakeup or something like that.
Even if there wasn't, just with the CEO in place, if long-term Apple's stock, kept sliding down or was depressed below what they think it should be or something, are they going to do something that affects consumers to try to address that?
And in the past, when Steve Jobs was running the company, when their stock would bottom out, that led to an innovative something. Yeah. We got the iMac, we got the iPod, we got the iPhone. I mean, those were products created when the iPhone not so much, but the iPod, the company was basically bankrupt.
So you see, you're
bet everything on this music player.
So you're hoping.
I don't know if Tim Cook is that type of CEO.
No, he's not.
You're hoping the Apple stocks tank. Am I hearing you correctly?
Well, Apple's not even that kind of company anymore. Right. Regardless of what the CEO is, they have more revenue from more places. They have more levers they can pull to do things. But it has been true that in the past, Apple has tended to simplify their product lineup when things get dire. They go, okay, what's working? Let's put our eggs behind that. Let's kill off these things that aren't working, that aren't selling. So we might see something like that where we just go, the product lines are too big.
But that was also a Steve Jobs thing too. We haven't really seen that under Tim Cook at all.
No,
we haven't had
expanding.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Yes. And let's go ahead and make this. Everybody's talking about Apple, that it charges too much. That's actually kind of the topic of what's in the Supreme Court right now. They were deciding on Monday if you should, okay. So basically what it is.
Roman took his transitions with him, apparently.
Yeah. And, not that they were always that great to begin with.
Yes. The Supreme Court, it may, they had arguments on Monday about whether or not to let a lawsuit proceed against Apple, saying that it's breaking federal antitrust laws by, basically they have a monopoly on the iPhone market. As a result, the plaintiffs.
The App Store.
Yeah, the App Store, excuse me. The customers say that Apple is charging too much with its 30% commission and stuff, and they want the ability to be able to sue Apple directly.
Yeah, and they also want to be able to, have apps that are installed in other ways than just the App Store.
See, I'm going to jump on that right now because that is actually one of the main reasons why people buy into the app system and developers like to develop for it is because the App Store comes with that safety net. That it is vetted, that you can only get it through there. When you allow it to go, get it from different sources, you allow all kind of, the potential of viruses, about some kind of, something in there. I think that's really dangerous for Apple. On some level I see where they're coming from. On the other hand, that kind of ruins the whole integrity of that system.
My understanding of the lawsuit is that it doesn't actually have anything to do with trying to force Apple to allow apps outside of the App Store. Mm-hmm. What it is it's saying that because you can only get apps through the App Store, the developers have had to charge consumers too much money to cover that Apple's 30%, and that has caused their plaintiffs, the class action, to have to pay too much money. So what they want from Apple is they want Apple to pay a fee. They want to pay all those people the money that they overcharged them. So I think that's what they're trying ultimately, unless you get a judge who goes way off the rails and like really slams Apple beyond the scope of the lawsuit. I think it would only end up in Apple's got to pay a few $100 million in returning fees, App Store fees, to maybe to the developers, maybe directly to the consumers.
But what does that mean going forward? Let's say that happens. Let's say the class action goes forward. They Apple loses. They have to pay $600 million, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What about the next? They're still charging 30%. They're still doing the same practices.
That's the question. The Supreme Court isn't expected to make its judgment until I think July next year.
Yeah.
And that judgment is only whether or not this lawsuit can go forward.
Yes.
That's going to take a year or two at least. So it's going to be like 2020, 2021 before this lawsuit gets finished, and it'll probably get settled out of court.
Yeah.
Which means there's no judgment. But if anything, like the worst that would happen to Apple is they get slapped with a big fine or, a fee,
which they appeal.
Yeah, there's going to be appeals and stuff, but if they lose all of this, they're going to get slapped with some. They're going to have to pay out a bunch of money back to users, and maybe change the rates on their app store.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, and
I think that would be the worst. I don't think they're going to be forced into allowing apps to be installed from other sources.
So real quick, Cherryberry asks, how does it work on the Android side?
See, I was about to ask that myself. You would know better, Mike.
Yeah, they well, there's the Play Store. That's the front and center way to buy stuff. But you can side load anything you want. Essentially, Google sets up in settings. You have to flip switches and you have to allow access. And it's not just you press a button and all of a sudden everything gets installed on your phone. But yeah, you can. It is allowed, and developers offer SDKs, and you can put it through. I'm sorry, APKs, and you can download betas. You can download different versions of software. You can download software that isn't available on the Play Store. Yeah. And every now and again, you read a story about 100 million viruses on Android phones.
Yeah,
99% of which are caused via that method. Yes. There are other, in other countries, there are whole other app stores that aren't the Play Store.
Or even here, you've got Samsung phones.
Samsung has their own Galaxy Store.
Their own Galaxy Store pre-installed on all their phones. Amazon's got their app store. Which you get by downloading an APK. That's an application package. You get it, you download it from their site, you install it, and then you've got another app store on your phone.
Yeah, and it asks you, it says, do you want to do this? And you have to allow apps to be installed from unknown sources. It's not something that the average person will do or even really know how to do. But a better look at this is the Mac. Because that's Apple, and that is allowed. They have the App Store, and there's but there's a lot of developers, a lot of big name developers that offer their apps outside because of that cut and because of Apple's rules.
Well, and because it's always been that way. Yeah. There's certain the way that apps sold in the App Store have to be kind of sandboxed and stuff. It makes it hard for certain kinds of Mac apps to be sold there.
And you don't hear about mountains of viruses on the Mac. Apple has their system, and they know it works. So they could do it. It would be a much messier situation, I think, on the phone.
Yeah.
But it can be done, and it can be done safely.
Do you know if Google charges a rate for the ones?
It's the same as Apple.
It's the same as Apple's.
I think they have a thing where once you reach a certain level, like Microsoft, once you reach a certain level, the rate changes a little bit, but it's ultimately for most people it's 30%.
Yeah, I feel like,
and that's why a game like Fortnite skipped it.
Yes,
you download the Fortnite installer from the site on Android.
That was a nightmare at the beginning.
Yeah, it was. It immediately
like
had
on
exactly
day one.
the problem they said it would.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way that the Mac App Store works, because like one of the apps that I use is Daisy Disk, and it's really good for basically cleaning out your Mac and stuff. So you can download a version through the Mac App Store, which is what I did, and I like that because I can just go back at any time and re-download something very easily. But I guess because of Apple's protections, it doesn't give you full access to everything. So if they know that you have bought it from the Mac App Store, they'll give you a separate download on their site, which gives you full access to your Mac. So that's one of the interesting ways that
some of the cool utilities that for changing the way your mouse works and stuff like that. Things like that tend to not be in the App Store because they can't be.
Yes. And so, that's, a prime example of where you see Apple safety versus everything else. I feel like I need to point out that one of the main thing that's being the roadblock here is this case called Illinois Brick Company versus Illinois. And that held that only the direct purchaser of a good or a service may sue someone that they believe is a monopolist for damages. So meaning, the way Apple sees it, it's basically providing a platform for the developers, and they sell the stuff. That Apple is not directly selling the stuff, so to speak. But the plaintiffs.
Sure, there's some merit to that.
Yes, and because
I think the biggest issue here is you can buy another phone. You can develop for another platform.
That's what I was going to make.
That, Apple doesn't have a monopoly on smartphones. It has a monopoly on iOS, just as Google has a monopoly on Android. Yeah. It's their thing. So I don't know where this case will go, but if I was Apple's lawyer, that's my argument.
Yeah.
It's not a monopoly.
Well, the phone is never argued that the phones were a monopoly. They just the monopoly is selling apps on the iPhone can only happen.
Sure, but if you can buy an Android phone and do this, you can get that experience, that app experience on another device.
And
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so we'll see.
But that's hopefully that's all it comes down to, is the fact that maybe they'll lower the rates or something like that, because I do actually worry that if it goes too far, that could compromise that focus on privacy and piracy and everything else.
I don't think Apple would let it get to that, but we'll see.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be years in the making, and it'll probably end up in a settlement.
Yeah.
that
Right.
So lawyers will get rich, and some people in the class action will get 37 cents each.
Right.
And
I mean, think about how long Apple and Samsung had that court case. It was like
Which
and years
one?
and years and years. Yeah,
Which
right.
one exactly? Yes. And but I do know that what you were talking about, what they were saying, even Justice Roberts, is actually on Apple's side. Chief Justice, was saying that the plaintiffs weren't, they're saying things now that they weren't even saying in their original complaint.
Right.
So remember how you were saying, just lower the prices. Well, it kind of goes a little bit beyond that now. So that's what's making it, a little bit more, complex. But let's see. So
let's just one last thing. I mean, yes, Apple charges 30%. It also supplies a distribution method to 1 billion devices.
yes.
And it's safe and it's secure and people trust it and they advertise and all that stuff that comes with that 30%. You're not getting nothing for your money.
Right.
So.
And I believe that's what Apple is. One of their arguments is the malware protection and everything. I know that was specifically mentioned. So that's it. And but apparently all this safety is not enough for people, to go out and buy themselves a new iPhone, even when it is cheaper, because we had the iPhone trade-in program.
Oh boy.
And yes, and so yesterday it was Apple they boosted the amount of money that it gives through its Give Back program for the iPhone 6 through the iPhone 8, but not the 8 Plus, just for the limited time. So give you an idea, you can now get a $150 for an iPhone 6 or $200 for a 6 Plus. Previously it was $75 for the 6 and $100 for the 6 Plus. So that's pretty nice. The boosts aren't as big for the newer ones, like an iPhone 7 Plus, you get 300 as opposed to 250. iPhone 8, 300 from 250. But it's a nice little holiday area way to get an iPhone.
Right. This is Apple's official give back program where you take your old iPhone into an Apple store or whatever, or I think they'll cross ship it if you do it online. But you're turning it in and they're giving you a discount. They're giving you credit toward the purchase of a new iPhone, and this is only if you buy an iPhone 10s or 10R.
Correct. Yes.
You get this, but it's they basically increased the amount they're giving people for the holidays, basically by $75 to $100 for most of these models. And the sweet spot's the 6S. Like the 6S non plus is now worth $200.
$200.
Is it?
Yes.
Where you were getting 100 and you could do better. You can probably actually still do better than these prices if you look around at a lot of these phone buyback places and stuff. But that's kind of a hassle sometimes. So.
Yeah, frankly, if I were to do it, I'd just prefer to do it at Apple, because I did try to sell my phone. I've seen some people saying do it through Craigslist, do it through eBay, and the guy doesn't show up.
That kind of
I've had all kinds of problems.
Yeah, me too.
If you have a newer phone, you'll get a lot more money. I mean, go ahead and go through the hassle, because you're talking hundreds of dollars of difference. But if you've got like a 3 or 4 year old iPhone that you're trying to get rid of, sometimes donating it to charity is always great. Yeah. If you can afford to do that, but the trade-in program's not too bad.
So Consumer Life asks, should they have done this from the very beginning at launch?
I think they needed at least a little bit of breathing room before they did that. Yeah. Not right at launch. But
the first week of these sales are always going to be gangbuster. You've got pent-up demand, but It is a question of are they doing this because
yes,
demand isn't where they expected it to be
That's
for
what it is.
these phones? And I mean, we have no way of knowing because it's not like Apple gives us weekly sales data or something.
They won't give us quarterly sales data.
They're not going to give us anything other than revenue numbers.
Yes.
They're going to give us the revenue number for the phones. And you'll have to guess what that means for
Which
units.
it should be stated that like nearly every other company does that. Apple was rare in the fact that they broke out all of their numbers.
Yeah, breaking out the unit sales was weird. Now they'll just break out like iPhone sales, as the revenue number. But anyway, it's there's no way to know, but it certainly doesn't look good.
Right, exactly.
Which
I don't
is why
remember
the
them
stock
doing
dropped
this before.
again, because it smacks of a little bit of desperation.
Yeah,
It's kind of like Fallout 76 dropping in price just a couple of weeks after it came out. Yes. And so,
I mean, if Apple starts running like BOGO offers on Apple.com, then I'm gonna start worrying.
right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is still not quite the deal that you get turning in your phones to carriers and stuff. So there is some question about whether or not this is just more about them trying to move some of the allocation that they have for their own stores versus stuff they sell through carriers, as opposed to sales being poor all around. They may just not be doing a very good job selling directly their allocation that they've got in their stores and stuff. Or
maybe it's just simply upgraders. Like they expected a larger percentage of iPhone 6s and 7s to be jumping at these phones, and they're not. So they're giving them a little more incentive to do so. I don't know.
And I know we were really expecting the 10R to be super popular. And, and honestly, I know maybe it's because I've gotten so desensitized to this, but I don't think $749 is a bad starting price for that phone. But
yeah, we have gotten desensitized.
Yeah,
a super expensive iPhone.
Yeah, imagine like the iPhone 4 was $750. People would have like torn their hair out.
Because I know a lot of people were saying like these discounts, subtract that from the 10R, and that's what it should have been when it launched for the price.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said. If it was $699, it would be a little bit more palatable to some people. But $750 for what you're getting, I think it's one of the best phones out there. And if you use that upgrade program, you spread out the payments over 24 months. It's like $30 a month, something like that.
Yeah, most consumers in the U.S. are buying them from carriers. Yeah, that's where they're getting their upgrade, and they all have a turn-in program for your old phone, and you're getting about this much, sometimes more. And they're spreading it out through payments, and I think that's where most of it's coming from. So it could just be Apple kind of getting on equal footing with them, at least for the holiday season.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think there's a larger issue is that, and I see this with my mom. She has an iPhone 6. And so she was talking to me over Thanksgiving, and I said, the iPhone 10R is $750. She's like, I'm not paying that. She's like, my last phone was $100. I'm like, no, it wasn't. That was a subsidized price, and there was all sorts of fees and things that you didn't know about. Yeah. Now the plans are a lot more simpler. You're paying $70 a month or $80 a month for your line, and then you have to pay the phone on top of that. But it equals the same, some cases left. People, a lot of consumers don't really understand that they weren't paying these prices before.
Right.
Especially if you were not upgrading every time. Like if you kept the old phone and you were still paying those extra fees, then you were just paying those extra fees on old phone.
Also true. Like Verizon never called you up and said, "Oh, by the way, you paid off your phone. Here's $15 a month back." They never gave you that. Yeah.
Cruise and Read says that they always bought their phone purchase outright many times, but this year is giving them pause.
I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. If you can swing it, it's the better way to do it just because you own it and it makes it easier to sell and you can sell whatever time you want and all this other stuff. But, the way the plans are laid out now are not bad. They really are. You're either over 18 months or 2 years. It's just dividing up the payments with basically no interest.
There's no interest. And that upgrade program is just nice because if you have the option, if you want the next year's phone, you can get it. If not, you can keep paying for 12 months to keep your phone.
Well, I think the comment
separate from your bill, your normal bill. So when you have paid off your phone, your bill does go down,
Yes.
I think the comment was more just about like the overall total price, whether you're paying it monthly or not. But I think
totally.
If we see next year that the prices stay the same, that's probably like, oh yeah, they realize that maybe they've found the ceiling that people are willing to pay.
Well, they're not going to go down.
Yeah,
they're not going to go. So maybe they stay the same and they don't do that 20% jump.
Yeah. Apple doesn't do that
I,
back off.
I can't
They did
imagine
this year,
that.
didn't
I think this is the ceiling. $1,100 for a phone at the base model. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Unless Apple comes out with some super duper, prototype thing that, like Samsung's folding thing that's like 1,500. But for these phones, for what we got,
Yeah.
this is it.
Maybe they'll try to change the name from having phone in there, so people don't think of it as a phone. And it's like no, it's a computer. It's
Maybe the iPhone Pro will be $1,400.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's for professionals to edit and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, it was going back to what you were saying about, Apple adjusting when it sees, its stock falling and everything. I'm worried, got to admit, especially since Steve isn't there, that, they will start like scattershotting stuff and, like, let's listen to what customers want. But is it like really what
I
you
don't
want?
think so.
So,
No, it's, under Tim Cook's realm. They've been solid. The Apple Watch is a solid product. The HomePod, as much as we make fun of it, it's a solid product.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. They're taking their time, they're developing things, and they're putting forth, the things that they think are best. I don't think that's going to change.
Yes. And the nice thing is, there hasn't been like a big failure. Like even the HomePod, we keep saying that a lot of its problems could be fixed basically with a good software update.
Serious problems are not Tim Cook's doing.
Yeah.
They're problems that have been long in the making.
Yeah.
And
a lot of it is that privacy thing, when that's what they're continuing to work on, how to do all the stuff that Google does on the device without going to their servers, and it's not an easy task.
So, do you know many people who have actually bought a 10R?
Me?
Yes.
I know one myself.
I know, yeah. That because that's usually my gauge. But it was like my parents. I tried to convince them to get a 10R too, and they haven't said no, but they were very much waffling on it. And and I was like, if you want to go, and I'm also kind of worried about how they're going to adjust to Face ID. And sometimes I wonder if other people who are really attached to the home button will feel that same way. It took me like a week to get used to it. But.
I've always been on the side that I don't think the 10R is going to sell more than the 10S. So I still stand by that.
Interesting.
We'll see. Brad Charkos, our PC World colleague, him and his wife bought one over Thanksgiving.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Did he previously have an Android phone, or was he an iPhone?
He had an iPhone SE.
Yeah, he was
holding out for
he was really hoping,
SE, and he finally gave up and said they're not going to do it.
That's correct.
He's a super small phone guy, and I swear to God, he'll never admit it, but in a month he'll be a big phone guy.
Or he just you just don't notice after a while. Yeah.
And do you think? I mean, and going back to that, do you think? Apple really, because I know a lot of people want to see that comeback of that smaller phone. But do you think Apple really needs to do that?
No. I mean, sure, if they want to, people will buy it. But the iPhone SE was never for small phone people. They were for emerging markets, and they have a different strategy there now.
Yeah, those emerging markets, most of them are really fond of big phones.
That's right. So that's why they have the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus for whatever it is, $450 or $500, whatever it costs. That's the strategy now.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were hoping that the 10R would take off in China with the dual SIM and stuff. I mean,
it's tricky, and I mean, Apple just hit this perfect storm of just like the tariffs, and there's so much going on right now to affect how these things are selling and affect how the investors see Apple. I'm really curious to see how they do over the holiday quarter. And going forward, are these tariffs going to take effect? Will they figure out with China? Because there's a lot of ill feelings from China toward American products now on top of the tariffs. So there's a lot that has to get straightened out that's beyond Apple's control before we can see, how well these phones are really doing.
And an important point about the tariffs, I have seen some analysts, I can't find it in my notes, but there were some analysts that were saying that it would actually cost, a lot more for Apple to start making iPhones in the U.S. And I don't think they do that.
Yeah.
So he would say like it was like be like a 10 or 20% tariff. That's what Trump said. But
it would be like 50% more.
Yes, exactly. And the ones I was seeing were conservative. They were saying like 30%. But
not to mention just the cost of building these factories. They don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make 50 million phones a quarter. I mean, that's not, you can walk in and rent out space in whatever factory is available.
Yeah, it takes quick turnaround would be it would take 2 years to build that factory.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you got to staff it.
And do you remember the sapphire glass? Remember how they had the problem with that when they tried?
Sure.
Yeah,
and they tried that here, and that was a spectacular failure.
Although the glass on iPhones today
one
is made in the U.S. But
yes.
But then that's the other part, is that just getting all of the pieces that go into your iPhone, which are made all around the world, then those all have to come to the U.S. and those are subject to tariffs. So even if it's assembled here, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all those American jobs you want. It's jobs putting the phones together, which is the cheapest job in the entire chain of making an iPhone. That's like the lowest paying thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's certainly nothing like that's not going to happen soon.
Yeah. And I mean, by the time push comes to shove, everything changed. There could be a new administration. Who knows? What by the time that point happens. So I don't foresee that ever really taking root here.
Yep.
The only time I really see case for a doom and gloom is we really got to see what Apple does next year, because like I said, I know you laugh, but it is an S year. It's what I consider an off year and stuff. And I think whatever Apple shows us next year, well, that'll kind of
the early rumors are that they're the same.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, next year ought to be a fun year because it's probably going to be kind of another S year on the iPhones, which is what we're used to. The 6, 6S, 7, those were
even iPhone 1, 2, or 3, whatever, 1, 3, and 3S were not all that different from each other.
Not all that different. But they've got next year's the year a lot of other stuff happens. Next year's the year they start rolling out their streaming video service. Next year's Mac Pro, who knows where the MacBook line is going.
iOS 13 is rumored to be a big major change for the iPad.
Right. Who knows what they're going to do with the regular non-Pro iPad, whether that goes to a Face ID type of thing. So I think we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff from Apple, not in what is just the iPhone. And the picture of the health of the company is going to start to be about a lot of other products and services beyond how many iPhones do they sell.
And with iOS 13, if they do manage to make this into a more useful device for just work and stuff, that could be big, I think. And
especially if you're getting one free from us.
Yes, exactly. Very nice there. So I think that's just going to wrap us up. Because we had some very fun topics today. So but once again, yes, we are teaming up with Anytrans. We are giving away an 11-inch iPad Pro. This is a 12.9 inch, so this is not what you will be getting. But yes, totally for free. That's normally a $7.99 value. It is 64 gigs and does not come with a pencil, does not come with the Smart Folio, but it's still a great tablet. And I like it.
We're not rich people.
Yeah, we're not rich.
Clearly.
So it's like I said, I got to do the payment plan for my iPhones. But yes, once again, just go up on the site, you'll be able to see it. And if you want an extra code to win, enter the word Wolverine. Yes. And
in honor of our missing Wolverine.
Yes, in honor of our missing Wolverine. So but yes, that about wraps us up. This is 6:30. This is episode 631 of the Macro Podcast. Roman should be back next week, but if not, I will be here, to entertain you and regale you. So yes, but you have about 2 weeks for this contest. Just a reminder. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
See you.